Śhrīmad It Ilila Pavista Om, His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Charanarvinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, ISKCON's BBD Founder Acharya Jagadguru, Patita Pavana, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Rantaraj Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastapareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, entitled The Process of Creation. Verse 5 today. Verse 6. Yes, that's right. Verse 6. Bhuya eva vitsami Bhagavan Atma Mayaya Yatedam Srijite Vishvam Durvibhavyam Adishvarai Bhuya Esha Vitsami Bhagavan Atma Mayaya Yatedam Srijite Vishvam Durvibhayam Adishvarai Bhuya Eva Vavit Sami Bhagavan Atma Mayaya Yatedam Srijite Vishvam Durvibhavyam Adishvarai Bhuya Eva Vavitsami Bhagavan Atma Mayaya Yatedam Srijite Vishvam Durvibhavyam Adishvarai. Mataji's. Bhuya, again. Eva, also. Vivitsami, I wish to learn. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Atma, personal. Mayaya, by the energies. Yata, as. Idam, this phenomenal world. Srijite, does create. Vishvam, universe. Durvibhavyam, inconceivable. Adi Ishvarai, by the great demigods. Translation. So these are the questions of Maharaj Parikshit, which began yesterday, verse 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way through verse 10. And verse 11 is the description of how Shukadeva Goswami was greatly moved, and the word used agitated, and he began to speak his prayers for invocation to Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, very potent, powerful, and famous. We have Srila Prabhupada chanting them as a solitary bhajan on 72nd Street in the winter of 1965 and 66. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. Please repeat. I beg to know from you, how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigod. Purport: by his divine grace, ISKCON's BBT founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In every inquisitive mind, the important question of the creation of the phenomenal world arises. And therefore, for a personality like Maharaj Parikshit, who was to know all the activities of the Lord from his spiritual master, such an inquiry is not uncommon. For every unknown thing, we have to learn and inquire from a learned personality. The question of creation is also one of such inquiries to be made to the right person. The spiritual master, therefore, must be one who is Sarvagna, as stated hereinbefore in connection with Shukadeva Goswami. Can you make this a little louder so I don't have to be having it so close to my mouth to get any kind of sound to come out? Hare Krishna, Krishna, that's enough. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, 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 Hare Hare. In connection with Shukadeva Goswami. Thus, all inquiries on God, which are unknown to the disciple, may be made from the qualified spiritual master, and here the practical example is set by Maharaj Parikshit. It was, however, already known to Maharaj Parikshit that everything we see is born out of the energy of the Lord, as we have all learned in the very beginning of Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Janmadi Asya Yataha. So Maharaj Parikshit wanted to know the process of creation. The origin of creation was known to him, otherwise he would not have inquired how the personality of Godhead, by his different energies, creates this phenomenal world. The common man also knows that the creation is made by some creator and is not created automatically. We have no experience in the practical world that a thing is created automatically. Foolish people say that the creative energy is independent and acts automatically, as electrical energy works. But the intelligent man knows that even the electrical energy is generated by an expert engineer in a localized powerhouse, and thus the energy is distributed everywhere under the resident engineer's supervision. The Lord's supervision in connection with creation is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10, and it is clearly said there that material energy is a manifestation of one of many such energies of the Supreme. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaya Shruyate. An inexperienced boy may be struck with wonder by seeing the impersonal actions of electronics or many other wonderful things conducted by electrical energy, but an experienced man knows that behind the action is a living man who creates such energy. Similarly, the so-called scholars and philosophers of the world may, by mental speculation, present so many utopian theories about the impersonal creation of the universe, but an intelligent devotee of the Lord, by studying the Bhagavad Gita, can know that behind the creation is the hand of the Supreme Lord. Just as in the generating electrical powerhouse, there is the resident engineer. The research scholar finds out the cause and the effect of everything, but research scholars as great as Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and many other demigods are sometimes bewildered by seeing the wonderful creative energy of the Lord. So what to speak of the tiny, mundane scholars dealing in petty things? As there are differences in the living conditions of different planets of the universe, and as one planet is superior to others, the brains of the living entities in those respective planets are also of different categorical values. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one can compare the long duration of life of the inhabitants of Brahma's planet, which is inconceivable to the inhabitants of this planet Earth, to the categorical value of the brain of Brahmaji, also inconceivable to any great scientist of this planet. And with such high brain power, even Brahmaji has described in his great Samhita, Brahma Samhita 5.1, as follows: Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. There are many personalities possessing the qualities of Bhagavan, but Krishna is the supreme because no one can excel him. He is the supreme person, and his body is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. He is the primeval Lord, Govinda, and the cause of all causes. Brahmaji admits Lord Krishna to be the supreme cause of all causes, but persons with tiny brains within this petty planet Earth think of the Lord as one of them. Thus, when the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that he, Lord Krishna, is all in all, the speculative philosophers and the mundane wranglers deride him. And the Lord regretfully says, Avajananti mamuda manushyam tanum ashritam param bhavam ajanato mama bhuta maheshvaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 11. Brahma and Shiva, and what to speak of other demigods, are bhutas, or powerful created demigods who manage universal affairs, much like ministers appointed by a king. The ministers may be Ishvaras or controllers, but the Supreme Lord is the Maha-Ishvar, or the creator of the controllers. Persons with a poor fund of knowledge do not know this, and therefore they have the audacity to deride him because he comes before us by his causeless mercy, occasionally as a human being. The Lord is not like a human being. He is Sat Chid Ananda Vigraha, or the absolute personality of Godhead, and there's no difference between his body and his soul. He is both the power and the powerful. Maharaj Parikshit did not ask his spiritual master Shukadeva Goswami to narrate Lord Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He wanted to hear first about the creation of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami did not say that the king should not hear about the direct transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The time was very short, and naturally Shukadeva Goswami could have gone directly to the 10th canto to to make a shortcut of the whole thing, as generally done by the professional reciters. But neither the king nor the great speaker of Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam jumped up. Like the organizers of Bhagavatam, both of them proceeded systematically, so that both future readers and hearers might take lessons from the example of the procedure of reciting Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Those who are in control of the external energy of the Lord, or in other words, those who are in the material world, must first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality, and afterwards one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy. The mundaners are mostly worshippers of Durga Devi, the external energy of Krishna, but they do not know that Durga Devi is but the shadow energy of the Lord. Behind her astonishing display of material workings is the direction of the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10. The second time in this purport we referred to this verse. The Brahma Samhita affirms that Durga Shakti is working by the direction of Govinda, and without his sanction, the powerful Durga Shakti cannot move even a blade of grass. Therefore, the neophyte devotee, instead of jumping at once to the platform of transcendental pastimes presented by the internal energy of the Lord, may know how great the Supreme Lord is by inquiring about the process of his creative energy. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, descriptions of the creative energy and the Lord's hand in it are explained, and the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita has warned the neophyte devotees to be seriously on guard against the pitfall of neglecting knowledge about Krishna in regard to how great he is. Only when one knows Lord Krishna's greatness can one firmly put one's unflinching faith in him. Otherwise, like the common man, even the great leaders of men will mistake Lord Krishna for one of the many demigods, or historical personality, or a myth only. The transcendental pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan, or even at Dwarka, are relishable for persons who have already qualified themselves in advanced spiritual techniques. And the common man may be able to attain such a plane by the gradual process of service and inquiries. So, as we shall see in the behavior of Maharaj Parikshit. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shulakaya Chakshu Elamitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupaganamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagara Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vinamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surito Pangor Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Svapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Dibyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Śrīmad Ratnagara Sringasanasto Śrīmad Radha Shilagovinda Devo Prastalavi Sevyamano Svarahami. In a temple of jewels underneath the desire trees of Vrindavan, seated upon an effulgent throne, or the divine couple Shri Shri Radha and Govinda were served by their most confidential associates. We beg to offer our respectful obeisances unto them. Shriman Rasarasa Rambi Vamsi Bhattatatastita Karshan Venu Svanar Gopir Gopinatha Sriyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bhuya eva vavitsami Bhagavan Atma Maya Yatedam Surjate Visvam Durvibhavyam Adishvarai. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. So Prabhupada has taken the opportunity to give us a very profound and substantial purport. Anyone who has engaged in preaching work, giving classes to newcomers, giving short and sanguine examples to candidates on book distribution, will know that this is a very important point Prabhupada is making in the beginning. In every inquisitive mind, the important question of the creation of the phenomenal world arises. And Prabhupada develops by describing that energy, particularly in terms of electrical energy, is always under the control of the electrical engineer. People have a woozy or vague idea of God as the controller and how God is actually in control of everything. You just say, did New York City just happen by accident? All of these parking meters and street lights and bus lanes, and there was people, maybe not so expertly, but intelligently trying to plan it all out. It's not cars driving and buses driving down the street, it's people driving the cars and buses down the street. You are not the body, you are the soul within the body. So, there are good and bad motivated people in all different categories. So we shouldn't, seeing how Prabhupada was very hard on the scientists and the philosophers understanding the cause of things, think that Prabhupada is condemning them all. Prabhupada is actually praising. It is natural in the inquisitive mind to want to know what is going on here, what is manifesting all this. And we see, anyway, you could say too bad, but it was his time to be born when he did and to leave when he did. I believe in 1945, or maybe the early 1950s, Albert Einstein. He wasn't as fortunate as Charlie Chaplin to be retired on Lake Geneva and get a Bhagavad Gita given to him by his wife, who got a book from the devotees distributing it in town. But his conclusion was there must be God behind this whole thing. There must be an intelligent person behind this whole thing. And Prabhupada goes on to describe, instead of speculating, for every unknown thing we have to learn and inquire from a learned personality. The question of creation must be made to the right person. So therefore, one who is to give the answer, or the spiritual master, he must be sarvagna. Sarva means all, knowledge. He must know everything. Prabhupada was asked, I believe in Mayapur, 1975, on a morning walk. Does the spiritual master know everything? No, the spiritual master doesn't know everything. Only Krishna can know everything. But the spiritual master will know everything that Krishna wants him to know. Sarvagna, as stated here and before in connection with Shukadeva Goswami. Thus, all inquiries on God which are unknown to the disciple may be made from the qualified spiritual master. And here the practical example is set by Maharaj Parikshit. So, of course, Maharaj Parikshit is in the position to show the example of the perfect disciple or the perfect inquirer. And similarly, Shukadeva Goswami is setting the example, showing the example of being the expert spiritual master and the expert and qualified speaker. So, where is it? The procedure of hearing Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Prabhupada has described that Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes are described in the 10th canto. They might be hinted at to some degree in earlier cantos. Actually, we see in the 3rd canto, which is actually perhaps a look into one of the most elevated sections of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Krishna's revelation to Uddhava, the Uddhava Gita. And it's not really described very much at the conclusion of this multi-chapter. How many chapters? Like 25 chapters in the 11th canto, something amazing. There's just a brief text or two, his feelings in separation, but the full-blown manifestation of his heartache and transcendental despair and separation from Krishna is described in the 3rd canto, which leads to the Vidura and Maitreya being touched by this incredible feelings of this topmost devotee of the Lord Uddhava. But generally, we understand that the cantos are progressive. Prabhupada said, unless one is free from the desire for illicit sex, one should not proceed beyond the 1st and 2nd cantos, who are likened unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Like all types of sense gratification in this material world, it's born out of a type of envy of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, and I want to be the enjoyer, of which illicit sex is the topmost form of trying to imitate the Lord in his sublime internal pastimes. Therefore, Prabhupada is, I'm hearing him in Vrindavan, those who live here must be ideal Goswamis. They must give up eating, sleeping, mating, and defending to actually live in Vrindavan correctly. So, to promote the student so that he's actually qualified to hear the internal pleasure potential pastimes of the Lord, ultimately culminating in the Lord's pastimes with Radharani and the Gopis, the Rasa Leela, etc., one has to be completely free with this synonymous. To be free from the desire for sex life means also to be free from envy. If one actually, instead of trying to mechanically give up material desires, one should get to the root, to the very bottom of one's regard and appreciation of the Lord as the supreme enjoyer, as the supreme controller, as the dearmost friend of every living entity, and become a devotee and develop saintly qualifications, then automatically material desires are destroyed without any separate endeavor. Therefore, bhakti mama vijananti yavanyas chasmi tatvata. Only by devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. Maharaj Parikshit did not ask his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, to narrate Lord Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. He wanted to hear first about the creation of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami did not say that the king should hear about the direct transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The time was very short. I was just hearing Prabhupada. He was saying, Maharaj Parikshit, he only had 7 days. So for him, the Bhagavatam was a 7-day recitation. So this kind of idea that we have 7-day Bhagavat Saptaha, Prabhupada is saying, where does this come from? And Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam should be recited every day throughout your entire life. Not just, okay, so the professional, okay, 7 days. Now you're self-realized. Now you know everything. And no, not like that. 7 days for Maharaj Parikshit, and he's showing how he utilized his time so properly and how he gave up his imperial throne, he gave up all of his opulences, he gave up everything. And and there was question what to do with the remaining time in life. So many opinions were given. But finally, the correct opinion was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, and all unanimously agreed is one should engage in non-stop hearing and chanting about the name, fame, form, qualities, pastimes, entourage of the Supreme Lord. Time is very short. Prabhupada uses the word shortcut. You make a shortcut, you know, the actual path, you have to go through all the different things, to like, say there's like a, I don't know, like a decathlon or a marathon, and you have to reach all points and like hit the bell and gather the thing that's supposed to be at that station, and or like the Olympic decathlon, that they run it all around the world, and let's make a shortcut of the whole thing, and let's just put the flame on a Learjet or something and just fly it to the host city from wherever. I think they lighted in Greece, the site of the first Olympiad, like that, So you can't do that. It has to go all around the world, and then the glory of the thing, wow, it went all around the world and is lighting the Olympic flame in Atlanta in 1996 or wherever the heck it was. Or I think it was canceled this year, 2020, they were supposed to have it. So he could have made a shortcut of the whole thing, as generally done by the professional reciters, but neither the king nor the great speaker of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam jumped up like the organizers of Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada was very fond of using this terminology, jumping. Don't jump like a monkey, or material life. Building these skyscraper buildings, big, it's just like jumping like dogs and monkeys. Don't jump like a dog and a monkey. So in this regard, not understanding how great are the Lord's internal pastimes. And Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam, if you know the reason for my appearance and what my activities signify, what is the significance, then what happens? You become free from the cycle of repeated birth and death, and you go back home, back to Godhead. That's not like, okay, you do this, and this mechanical thing, you do this, and then you get this, answer these questions right, and you're going to win the prize. There's no cleansing of the heart, there's no qualifying you as a good person. You just pick the right number and you win the prize. No. To understand this properly means that you resurrect your real abhiman, your real identity. One definition of sin is departure from one's original mentality as a devotee of the Lord. Hari Bol Naveen. Safe travels. Hare Krishna. Reinstatement in your original identity as a devotee of the Lord. And part and parcel of your pure devotional mentality is you become the knower of everything. And one who, what does it say in the Bhagavad Gita? He becomes the knower of everything without doubting by dint of his devotional service. Both of them proceeded systematically so that both future readers and hearers might take lesson from the example of the procedure of Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Those who are in control of the external energy, or under the control of the external energy, or in other words, those who are in the material world, most first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and afterwards one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy. So, of course, we have to have a goal to be inspired to try to work for, to achieve. So Srila Prabhupada, his presentation in his books, we were saying that if one is, not conquered lusty material desires, he shouldn't proceed between the first and second cantos. But at the same time, Prabhupada said, I've given you everything in the first cantos. He was satisfied that if even just that was enough. But along the way, Prabhupada, as the expert spiritual alchemist, has mixed the dosage. It's such a miracle dose, it's such a miracle medicine that even his most accomplished and loyal and sincere and responsible taking disciples who've been in the movement for like 45, 50 or more years can relish any aspect of Srila Prabhupada's book in as much as a newcomer who's barely been around less than a year, or maybe he's just received his first initiation. In other words, Prabhupada's books can be read and reread throughout life dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and Prabhupada said one will get new light and inspiration every time. For the accomplished and the adept, Prabhupada's reading of Prabhupada's books, even whatever aspect, okay, we're reading the first and second cantos. What is it? I think it's coming in this chapter. Shukadeva Goswami is describing a very intimate picture of the Lord's exchanging. It's even said in the Rasa Lila, when they exchanged betel nuts, the gopis spiritually advanced. And we're missing taking the Charanamrita, but we're taking the Mahaprashadam. Not ordinary food. What is it? Mahaprashadam Govinde. One who considers it ordinary is a resident of hell. It's the Lord's blessing. It's the Lord's favor. That the accomplished devotee, the actual devotee, he can relish descriptions of the Lord's kissing the gopis in the Rasa Lila equally with profound philosophical discourses, as there is no mundane distinction between the two. So it's a question of hearing. And Prabhupada said, just hear, that's all, the mantra. But that hearing opens up the unlimited, let's think of a word, kaleidoscope, unlimited vista of the spiritual world. Ultimately is revealed to you who you are as meant to serve those pastimes in a particular position, your original identity. That is called self-realization. And you ultimately become a participant. And we're glorifying the spiritual master. He's very expert at making tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. He's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. Prabhupada is doing that while speaking, you're not that body, this material world is not your home, etc., etc. Multifaceted consciousness simultaneously. Prabhupada is speaking on the first verse of the second canto. Your question is glorious because it's beneficial for all human society. Speaking in Montreal in the summer of 1968. Questions. What is the relationship between Lord Balaram and Radharani? What type of question is this? You must ask a question based on the subject matter. Who are you to, he didn't say, no, he actually didn't say who are you. He was actually very kind and compassionate to the person, but he was very firm on this point. Morning walk, one not so prominent disciple wanted to try to maybe ask a question or say something that, would be very moving to Prabhupada, and, but it's not so much the question as the mentality. Prabhupada, you must always be feeling the separation of your spiritual master. That you do not require. So that is actually Prabhupada's example of placing himself in the position to be instrumental to give everyone what they need to make proper advancement and actually connect them to Krishna simultaneously, individually, and in mass at the same time is just amazing. Satsvarup Maharaj wrote one beautiful poetry, stanzas in praise to Radha Damodar. This is back in 1984. And he said about coming to greet the deities, we stand before them as community, but each of us is with them alone. This is their mystic art. The mundaners are mostly worshippers of Durga Devi. So we think demigod worship, oh, that's just in India, but hey, it's right here in New York City. And we see all the manifestations of Durga worship, all the, piercing and pink-colored hair and, filthy Ramones t-shirt that they probably haven't taken off since 1982. We're sitting on the bench we're sitting on the, the Columbus Circle there, and there's Satya Hari, he's a Sikh, he's wearing his turban, and one old Ramon guy, just comes out, and he's chain smoking a cigarette, says, man, Sikhs and Hare Krishnas together, this is just beautiful, man, And in between puffs of the cigarettes, I was trying to praise him for his, nice vision there. Generally, mostly worshippers of Durga Devi, who is but the shadow energy of the Lord. Durga worshippers generally don't like to be guided or admonished for not being Krishna worshippers. They like being worshippers of Durga. What is it? Prabhupada said there's always these two transcendental pilgrims have always been at loggerheads through history. So there's always the worshippers of the Shakti and the worshippers and the Shaktas. They are not interested in worshipping the Shakti-man, the possessor of energy, or the controller of the energy. And they have very astonishingly foolish philosophies that they develop to substantiate their fixation. Behind her astonishing display of material workings is the direction of the Lord. 9:10, Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Samhita affirms, working under the direction of Govinda. Without his sanction, the powerful Durga Shakti cannot move even a blade of grass. This is one reason why New York as Prabhupada Desh is difficult. And sometimes we find devotees opt to not want to continue or even choose it in the first place, because you have to be very, very strong in spiritual discrimination to see all the different things that are going on here in proper perspective without becoming bewildered or attracted or repulsed by them. Therefore, the neophyte, without his sanction, Govinda, Durga Shakti, cannot move even a blade of grass. So, the fortune to live in Radha Govinda's temple and to take their darshan and live under their direction is very, very priceless, very, very powerful. And it's not like just coming to see well-dressed deities, well-dressed statues. It's very pretty, very nice colors. But actually, their darshan, they're giving us their darshan so that they can endow us and fortify us with transcendental knowledge. We say that from him ecstatic, Chakudan Deva, he who gave me eyes to see, he is my Lord, birth after birth. And what does that transcendental knowledge bring us to? Ecstatic love emanating, which what does what? Destroys the darkness of ignorance and illusion. They are the supreme Ishvar and Ishvari. They are the controllers of this city. And Prabhupada says, for those engaged in this Krishna consciousness movement, there is no question of uncertainty. You know, I was taking lunch prashad, and we were here yesterday, and one devotee was quoting to me all kinds of news and things that, you know, and it's just like, you're forgetting that Radha Govinda are the supreme controllers, you know, this, you know, what's going to happen after the election and the lunar eclipse and whatever else, you know, people want to talk about. Devotees don't need to, you know, we know what's going on. The general thing to know is that this is the plan of the Lord, and because we are trying to execute the mission of the Lord to the best of our ability, we're protected by the Lord. If that protection means that we continue our life in this world, that's the Lord's will. If that protection means that we leave this body and we leave this world and we're transferred to another place of the Lord's choosing, well, that's equally, if not even better, his protection. It's all up to him. Therefore, the neophyte devotee, instead of jumping at once to the platform of transcendental pastimes presented by the internal energy of the Lord, may know how great the Supreme Lord is by inquiring about the process of his creative energy. The goal is the internal energy. When will I be very much eager, not just eager, simultaneously qualified to read and understand the books left by the 6 Goswamis? And Prabhupada is inviting us. Anyone who wants to know what is devotional service, what are devotees, and maybe he says something else, must read this book, Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Rita. Actually, going to Vrindavan means to take shelter of the 6 Goswamis by reading books such as in the 2 most amazing plays, Vidagdha Madhava, Lalita Madhava, and others. So that is there, but the need of the hour for preaching, not just to newcomers, but to devotees who are surrendering their life, especially as young men and women, and they are now proceeding to start to give their life to their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. They must hear these things. We all must hear this again and again and again. If not just for our own purification and edification, but to equip us to how to preach to the general devotees, to the newcomers. This proper presentation, as Srila Prabhupada taught in his wake, must always be maintained. It must never go too far this way or too far that way. There can be adjustments for particular audiences according to time, place, and circumstance here and there, but as Prabhupada has said, my books are the law books, not just, okay, here's the book and we're going to keep it in print for 10,000 years, but no, understanding very deeply what is Prabhupada's intention, and even deeper than that, how the Lord has guided him to present these books. Prabhupada was amazed. Krishna has written these books. He would have his books read to him. You can read Shruta Kirti. And Prabhupada was, wow. He's the author of the book, but he's like wonderstruck because Krishna has guided him to write this. And Krishna is the ultimate, topmost spiritual alchemist who empowers and inspires his pure devotees who take the role and the responsibility of acharyas, how to present the thing according to time, place, and circumstance, which again is all the Lord's arrangement. The 1960s, the 70s, the karmis, they like to, the 70s, woo, and they have like what's going on in the 80s and the disco dance and this and that and whatever, and there's one place, Philemont in Columbia County near Stuyvesant Falls, and they in their town square they buried a time capsule, and it's like on like a looks like a tombstone, but it's like by the people of Philemont. This was buried here in 1976 or something, and they want the residents of Philemont in 2076 to unearth the thing, and it's like Star Wars and Darth Vader and whatever, they put in there, like the best of that year or time, Krishna's the creator of all of those things. Just amazing. People want to have their sense gratification, think that they're cool and hip, and my generation, yeah, we got something to say. Krishna's giving them that. As Prabhupada says, as naughty boys are supplied plain cradles, so the material energy is giving them. But these are all just tiny, reflective little dots of glitter, like people, what is it that, you throw this kind of glitter dust, whee, all over the place. It's a little tiny, And Prabhupada, such remarks describing the Tompkins Square Park Kirtan, the 1960s was but a flash in eternity, but Prabhupada, and like Allen Ginsberg's remark, to choose to attend the Lower East Side. What in compassion and another word, and intelligence like that. But the New York City, the Lower East Side, the 1960s, but a flash. But they were part of this planet, and they were part of Krishna's plan. So let the kirtan be here in this place. So Krishna consciousness, the right presentation, and the right presentation is based on real compassion. Compassion. If you're really compassionate, you really want to do right, you really want to help these people, then you'll be given the intelligence, what to say, how much to say, how little to say, when to say, in what tone, in what context, how the package is presented. All of that will be there, guided by the Lord directly. And Prabhupada has mentioned Kaviraj Goswami's admonishment. Also, there's the encouragement, he says, that you're a great scholar and a great thinker. Apply your analyzation abilities to understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and you will find it, you will be amazed. On guard to the pitfall of neglecting knowledge about how great Krishna is. What is it in the Bhagavad Gita? People say that God is great, but how great is he? Here are the details. One must not neglect this knowledge. It's absolutely necessary to be firmly fixed in unbroken devotional service. The transcendental pastimes of Lord in Vrindavan, or even at Dwarka, are eligible for persons who have already qualified themselves, and this is very nice, in advanced spiritual techniques. Just like we said, that Prabhupada had multifaceted abilities to be conscious of so many different levels and velocities of devotional service at the same time. That is a little insight to how great are the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And when we glorify the Acharya in his role as an assistant to the gopis who make different tasteful arrangement for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan, and hence that activity makes the spiritual master Ati Vallabhasya, most dear. We should see how Prabhupada created this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, painstakingly made this Sangha. We see in the prayers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his ultimate realized state as Kamala Manjari, that all of these Sakis and Gopis are my eternal well-wishers, my best friends, and my teachers in the art of conjugal love. I will stay with them eternally, experiencing great joy. That is the ultimate sadhu sangananda, the ecstasy of association with the pure devotees. So when such a pure devotee descends on the order of Radha and Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to create a society, the Vishva Vaishnav Sabharaj, you can read how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is reestablishing how beautiful, but how beautiful it's supposed to be. It is. So that is ultimately the internal International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And we don't have to go so deep to find it. It's there in Prabhupada's books and his instructions on how to live our life. We can very quickly understand and realize this and situate ourselves in this sublime position, rejecting any other type of idea of association. Advanced spiritual techniques, and the common man may be able to attain such a plane by the gradual process of service and inquiries, as we shall see in the behavior of Maharaj Parikshit. So inquisitiveness, what is that? That seed verse coming later in the 9th chapter. One must search for this in all times, places, and circumstances. Up to this, our inquiries go all the way up to who am I in serving the divine couple Shri Shri Radha Govinda in my spiritual body in Goloka Vrindavan Dham. And even when that is revealed, there are still unlimited questions and how to expand that service. But that is not on the platform of ignorance in this material world. That is on the platform of sublime eternality, knowledge, and real transcendental paramananda bliss. Bhuya eva vivisvatmi bhagavan atma mayaya yatitam srijate visvam durvibhavyam adishvarai. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. So we went over time, so Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, or no questions or comments? Or should we have them?
I'm going to catch the scowls on the devotees. I was wondering about, Prabhupada gave Krishna book very early in the movement.
Yeah.
And in that introduction to the Krishna book, he says that hearing Krishna's pastimes with the gopis is good for the liberated person, the person trying to be liberated, the sadhaka, and even the materialistic person engrossed in mundane sexual affairs. And he says precisely because the pastimes of Radha Krishna resemble.
Right.
And then later on we hear in the 33rd chapter how if you hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis with faith from the right person, then it gives you supreme bhakti and destroys the disease of the heart and all of that sort of stuff. So I was wondering, how do you...
Well, here in this purport, Prabhupada is describing, the actual process and procedure, or like the doctor says, okay, you have this disease, and if you do this, you'll encouraging words. But then when you actually sign up, maybe this isn't the greatest analogy, but anyway, you see what I'm saying, is that, there's going to be a procedure that you're going to have to go through. Or that it's an introduction, beginner's, not luck, beginner's taste, or like a encouragement to get you in the door. Again, like I was saying, if we see what the goal is San Francisco, and we're going to drive over the George Washington Bridge and go all the way, before the interstate system was... When they first invented the automobile in 1903, so some intrepid adventurers were going to drive from East Coast to West Coast, or whichever, And it took them like 2.5 months, you know. Which if you drive nonstop, it's like 72 hours. I mean, really nonstop, you know. And, you know, and they like so much along the way. And back then, people had never seen a car before, and, you know, and it was like some antagonistic. Actually, there were laws in many places that if you're in a motor vehicle and you come to an intersection, you have to get out and you have to shoot a shotgun in the air to warn the farmers and any animals that you're there, because this is such like a, you know, and like at Christian people, this is a machine of the devil. This is Satan here, you know. Anyway, so why are you going to do that and put up with all of these different crazy things and crazy people? Right? Are we having to deal with crazy people sometimes? You know, right? Shishi Radha Govinda Ki Jai. And of course, Prabhupada creating the Krishna book because he didn't know whether he would complete the entire Bhagavatam, which he only came up to the 13th chapter, which was, you know, way before getting even to the Rasa Leela chapters. So what is it in the Leela Amrita? The thought of not presenting an authorized 10th canto English translation was unthinkable. So he suspended everything in 1969 to write the Krishna book. And Prabhupada says, you know, people look at the cover of Krishna and ask, who is the boy with Krishna? Who is the girl with Krishna? And Prabhupada answers who the boy is, but he doesn't go on to say who the girl is in that introduction. You notice that? So there is not risk, a certain degree of risk, but it's a certain amount of mercy extended, but the Lord protects the devotee's effort. Like if you study and listen to Prabhupada's presentations up until, say, he went to India in 1969, 1970, he was very, very, you'll see there's a lot of generosity in him describing the Lord's Vrindavan pastimes, whereas later, when ISKCON got bigger and bigger and there were more and more disciples and more temples, became more of a worldwide movement, Prabhupada became much more conservative in the presentation. So there again, in conclusion, so there has to be the spiritual master. Guru Maharaj, should I be reading this? How much? And then, in terms of reading the 10th canto, and particularly reading Rasa Leela and things related to that, if you find that your lusty desires are awakened, then you shouldn't be reading it that much at all. I'll leave it at that. That's a good, big question. All right, thank you very much. Grantaraj Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai, Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai, Shri Parama Akadasi, and these last 4 days, because there's a Dwadasi of the month of Purushottam, are the most powerful days of the month to make spiritual advancement. Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.